The Faust legend has shadowed Western art for centuries because it speaks to something artists recognize in themselves. The story is simple. A brilliant man makes a pact with the devil, trading his soul for unlimited knowledge and power. Goethe spent most of his life writing his version, and Marlowe's Dr. Faustus still gets performed because the question never goes away. What would you give up to create something that matters? The legend endures in art because artists constantly make smaller versions of this bargain, choosing their work over comfort, relationships, health, and sometimes their own humanity. Caravaggio painted the way he lived, which was violently. He killed a man during a brawl over a tennis match and spent his final years running from justice, painting in Malta and Sicily while looking over his shoulder. His chiaroscuro technique, that dramatic clash of light and shadow, wasn't just an aesthetic choice. It was his interior life on canvas. The darkness in his paintings was real darkness. He used prostitutes and street people as models for saints and apostles, which scandalized the church but made his religious scenes feel immediate and raw. Whether the violence fed the art or the art required the violence is impossible to untangle, but they existed together in the same body. And that body ended up dead on a beach at 38. We've built entire industries around the idea that suffering produces better art. The tortured artist sells. We want our poets suicidal, our painters mad, our musicians addicted. This mythology serves a purpose because it makes art seem magical rather than worked for, and excuses us from examining why we create conditions that torture artists in the first place. The starving artist in the garage makes a better story than the artist who needs healthcare and fair payment. When we romanticize artists who destroy themselves, we are really just making peace with a system that continues to destroy them. The Faustian bargain isn't usually a conscious choice, it's structural. Artists are offered a deal where recognition requires sacrifice, and we applaud them for taking it while calling it genius instead of what it often is, which is exploitation dressed up in mythology. Van Gogh produced his most luminous work while his mind was falling apart. The paintings from his final 2 years blaze with color and movement. Those swirling skies and argent cypresses that everyone recognizes now. He painted them between stays in the asylum at Saint Remy, sometimes depicting the view from his window with bars he chose not to include. The intensity in those canvases came from somewhere, and part of where it came from was a mind that wouldn't let him rest. He sold one painting during his lifetime. The recognition came after he shot himself in a wheat field at 37. Whether the mental illness enabled the work or simply coexisted with it doesn't matter much when you're looking at the starry night and knowing what it cost. Robert Johnson recorded 29 songs in his lifetime and died at 27, possibly poisoned by a jealous husband. The myth that he sold his soul to the devil at a crossroad for his guitar skills started circulating after his death. The story probably wasn't true, but it didn't need to be true to become true. It shaped how people heard his music, added weight to lyrics that were already heavy, and turned a talented blues musician into a legend. The crossroads myth gave the people a framework for understanding genius they couldn't otherwise explain. A black man in Mississippi in the 1930s playing guitar like that needed a supernatural explanation, apparently because systematic training and raw talent weren't story enough. The myth became part of his legacy, inseparable from the music itself, which means Johnson's Faustian bargain wasn't with the devil but with how his story would be told. Artistic breakthroughs often require a kind of monomania that doesn't leave room for much else. Relationships fail, health deteriorates, and social connections often wither. The work demands everything and artists give it, not always because they want to, but because the work won't exist otherwise. This gets celebrated after the fact, turned into inspiring narratives about dedication and vision. But while it's happening, it's mostly just lonely and hard. The person making the breakthrough is usually too close to see what they're achieving, too buried in the process to know if the sacrifice will mean anything. Some artists emerge from these periods with something significant, others just emerge damaged. The difference often comes down to luck and timing rather than the quality of what they gave up to get there. Leni Riefenstahl made films that changed cinema and served Adolf Hitler. Triumph of the Wheel pioneered techniques that filmmakers still study. Those sweeping aerial shots and carefully choreographed masses of people moving like a single organism. She claimed after the war that she was just an artist and she didn't know about the camps, that aesthetics existed separately from politics. But she made propaganda that helped sell fascism to millions. And the fact that it was beautifully shot propaganda doesn't absolve anything. She spent the rest of her long life trying to rehabilitate her image, insisting on her innocence while never quite apologizing. The question her work raises never goes away. If you create something technically brilliant in service of evil, does the brilliance really matter? Art made for corrupt patrons carries their stain, whether the artists want it or not. Renaissance painters worked for the bourgeois who poisoned rivals and bought church offices. The creations outlasted the patrons and now fill museums where people view them as cultural treasures, divorced from the hands that commissioned them. This separation happens through time and institutional laundering. Museums explain the historical context in small plaques, while the art itself dominates the gallery. Eventually, the work becomes about itself rather than who paid for it. Whether this transcendence is real or just convenient forgetting depends on who you ask. The art exists independent of its origins, but those origins are still part of what it is. Artists today face versions of the same bargain with different names. For instance, oil companies fund art prizes and museums but put their logos on gallery walls. Tech billionaires commission sculptures and host artists at private retreats. Pharmaceutical companies sponsor exhibitions. The money is real and artists need money to make work, especially large-scale work that requires resources and space. Turning it down means someone else takes it. The project happens anyway without your involvement or vision. But accepting it means your name appears next to theirs in the program. Your work becomes part of their reputation management. Some artists refuse on principle and limit what they can create. Others take the money and try to maintain independence, hoping the work itself will speak louder than the funding source. Neither choice is clean. The bargain is already made before any individual artist walks in the room, built into how we've decided to fund culture in the first place. Gogh painted the black paintings directly onto the walls of his house when he was old, deaf, and had survived 2 near-fatal illnesses. Nobody commissioned them, and he never intended them for public viewing, covering the walls of the rooms where he lived alone. Saturn devouring his son shows a wild-eyed giant eating a headless body, and it hung in his dining room. These weren't illustrations of mythology or political commentary dressed in allegory. They were the inside of his head made visible. Everything he'd seen during the Napoleonic Wars and the Inquisition and his own physical decline, all of it condensed into figures that looked like nightmares. The paintings stayed on those walls until after his death, when someone transferred them to canvas and put them in museums where people could stand in front of them and feel disturbed in exactly the way Gogh probably felt every day. H.R. Gogh designed the alien xenomorph by fusing human anatomy with industrial machinery in ways that made both seem violated. His art came from night terrors and childhood traumas, from growing up near a pharmacy where his father kept a human skull on the counter. The biomechanical aesthetics he developed looked sexual and violent simultaneously. Organic matter forced into mechanical shapes, or machinery erupting through flesh. When Ridley Scott saw his work and brought him onto Alien, Gogh created something that lodged into cultural consciousness because it tapped into primal fears about bodies, about penetration and parasitism, and birth turned monstrous. The xenomorph's design works because it feels wrong on a visceral level that bypasses rational thought. Gogh spent his life painting variations of these themes, living in a house filled with his own disturbing creations, literally surrounding himself with the darkness he pulled out of his subconscious. Horror and the grotesque persist in art because they let us look directly at things we normally avoid. Death, decay, violence, madness, the fragility of the body, and the unreliability of the mind. These subjects make people uncomfortable, which is exactly why artists return to them. The discomfort means something real is happening, some boundary is being approached or crossed. Art that plays it safe doesn't stick the same way. The images that haunt us, that we remember years later, are usually the ones that showed us something we didn't want to see but couldn't look away from. This isn't shocking people for its own sake. It's about acknowledging that darkness is part of a human experience, and pretending otherwise just means we are less prepared when we encounter it. Artists who work in these territories are doing necessary work, holding up mirrors that reflect the parts of ourselves and our world that we'd rather ignore. Thank you for watching. Until the next one.